What if the most powerful man in the room wasn't afraid of the board, but of a glove compartment? In a glass-walled Chicago boardroom, a billionaire CEO rolled in his pride and joy. A restored 1969 engine, polished metal, perfect story, perfect legacy. And beside it, like a joke someone paid for, stood a 16-year-old orphan in thrift store jeans, hands stained with grease that wouldn't scrub out. They called her the stupid mechanic before she even touched the hood. Then the engine died. Right there, in front of investors. In front of directors who measured human worth in stock prices. The kind of silence that swallows careers. The kind of moment that makes people step back and pretend they were never part of it. And the girl, she didn't flinch. She listened. She leaned closer like the engine was whispering secrets. She moved with calm, almost gentle precision, like she'd been waiting for this exact failure her whole life. Minutes later, the engine came back to life, and so did something the CEO had kept buried for decades. Because when she reached into the glove box for the manual, her fingers didn't find paper instructions. They found a letter that didn't belong to the car. A letter that belonged to a family the CEO was taught to forget. Before we get into how a boardroom turned into a courtroom without anyone saying the word, tap like if you love stories, where the underestimated person flips the entire table. Subscribe for more high-emotion, slow-burn twists like this. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from, city and country? Also tell me, if you were Riley, would you expose everything immediately, or let them underestimate you a little longer? A girl like Riley Carter learned early that doors didn't open for her. They shut, they locked. Sometimes they slammed hard enough to rattle the bones in her chest. She'd bounced through foster homes across Michigan, each one with its own rules and its own version of kindness that always came with an expiration date. Some families were decent but overwhelmed. Others smiled in public and counted pennies in private, like Riley was an extra mouth that didn't belong at the table. She stopped expecting warmth. She stopped asking for more than a corner of space and the right to stay quiet. But she did expect one thing: the sound of machines telling the truth. Engines never pretended. They didn't fake affection. They didn't say maybe next time and forget your name the next day. When an engine was broken, it showed you. When it was fixed, it proved it. Riley found her first sanctuary behind a junkyard fence, where old trucks slept in weeds and rusted sedans looked like they'd given up on being remembered. She wasn't supposed to be there. That only made it better. At 14, she started carrying a battered notebook, diagrams, part numbers, little sketches of bolts and belts. At 15, she could rebuild a carburetor with hands that shook only when she was alone. By 16, she could diagnose an engine by ear in less time than most people took to unlock their phones. Her one keepsake fit in her palm, a stubby wrench with a faintly etched number on the metal, 1969 CH, and a smell of smoke that never fully left it. It was the only thing recovered from a fire years ago, the one no one in her foster file liked to discuss. 2 adults didn't come home that night. Riley didn't remember faces as clearly as she remembered heat, sirens, and the way people talked around tragedy like it might bite. She didn't have a family history, not really. She had fragments. Then 3 days after she turned 16, a woman in a sharp blazer showed up at her school office and asked for her by full name. Not Riley, not kid, not sweetheart. Riley Carter, the woman said as if the words had weight. Her badge read, Holt Dynamics, Executive Liaison. The staff looked confused. Riley looked suspicious. The woman introduced herself as Marina Klein and spoke with the easy confidence of someone who'd never had to wonder if she'd eat dinner. We're holding a private meeting in Chicago, she said. Our CEO is presenting a restored engine. We were told you have a special interest. Riley didn't answer immediately. Her eyes went to the woman's car keys. A luxury fob, black and silver with a tiny emblem Riley recognized from billboards. Holt. A name that meant money, inventions, and glossy magazine covers. A name attached to Graham Holt, the CEO who smiled like success was genetic. Marina added too quickly, It's just a demonstration, a photo opportunity, a nice moment. You'll be compensated. Compensated, like a prop. Riley should have walked away. She should have said no and stayed invisible. But something in her chest tightened at the mention of the engine, restored, showcased, 1969. Her mind did a strange little pivot, landing on that etched number on her wrench. She asked one question, The kind of question that sounded casual but wasn't. What model engine? Marina hesitated half a beat. A classic, the CEO's favorite. Riley nodded like that was enough. It wasn't. But the hesitation told her something was being protected. That night, Riley took the wrench out from beneath her mattress and held it under the lamp until the metal warmed against her skin. She traced the faded etching with her thumb. Maybe this was nothing. Or maybe it was the first real thread she'd ever been offered. In the morning, she agreed to go. Not because she trusted Holt Dynamics, because she didn't trust coincidences. The boardroom smelled like expensive coffee and quiet violence. Riley stepped out of the elevator into a corridor lined with framed patents and glossy photos of Graham Holt, shaking hands with people who looked like they never sweated. Marina guided her toward double doors where muffled voices rose and fell, confident, bored, impatient. Before they entered, Marina leaned in. "Just stand near the display," she murmured. "Don't interrupt. The CEO likes the story." "The story," Riley repeated, eyes flat. Inside, the room opened like a stage. Long table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows. Beyond the glass, Chicago's skyline stared back like it was listening. And there it was, set on a wheeled stand like an artifact. A pristine engine, chrome catching the light, hoses and clamps arranged to look beautiful rather than functional. A small plaque read, 1969, the beginning. Riley didn't look at the plaque for long. She looked at the block casting, the bolt patterns, the rebuild marks that told her what hands had touched it and how recently. She felt eyes on her immediately. Directors, men and women in tailored suits, scanned her like she was an unexpected smudge on their clean world. One of them, silver-haired with a watch that looked heavier than her entire life, let out a soft laugh. "That's the mechanic?" he said, not quietly. Another director smiled with thin lips. "Adorable. Is this a charity segment?" Riley's face didn't change, but something inside her cooled into a steady, controlled focus. Marina forced a grin. She's talented. The CEO wanted authenticity. Authenticity. Like it was something you could rent for an hour. Graham Holt entered a minute later, with the kind of presence that made people straighten without noticing they'd done it. He wore a navy suit, crisp and effortless, and a smile polished for boardrooms. His gaze flicked to the engine, then to Riley, and held there just a little too long, as if he was checking whether she matched the image he'd been given. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth, "this engine is more than metal, it's legacy." The directors leaned in, pleased. Legacy was their favorite word. Graham signaled to an assistant who moved to start the engine. A switch, a breath, a whir. And then nothing. A cough of dead ignition. A stutter. A hollow click that sounded like embarrassment. The room froze. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then a director at the far end chuckled as if this was entertainment. "Ah," he said, "that's your legacy, Graham." Another voice cut in, sharper. "Isn't there a reason we pay people to handle these toys?" Graham's jaw tightened, but his smile stayed attached like a mask. Marina's eyes darted to Riley, and there it was, her real purpose. "Riley," Marina said loudly as if announcing a clown, "why don't you take a look?" All heads turned. The silver-haired director leaned back. "Perfect. Let's see what the mechanic can do." He mispronounced it on purpose. Then, with a grin that wanted witnesses, he added, "What do you call her again? The stupid mechanic." A few laughs escaped, quick and cruel. Riley felt her cheeks warm, not with shame, but with something sharper. She stepped toward the engine without rushing. No drama, no speech, just movement. She didn't start with the obvious. She didn't wiggle wires for show. She leaned close, eyes narrowed, listening as if the engine had a pulse. Then she looked up at Graham, calm as still water. "Who rebuilt it?" she asked. Graham blinked. "A specialist." Riley nodded once. "Did they replace the fuel line?" A director scoffed. "She's guessing." Riley didn't respond. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn screwdriver. Nothing fancy, just honest. She loosened one clamp, adjusted the angle of a line that had been mounted with the kind of care that looked perfect, but wasn't. "Try again," she said. The assistant flipped the switch. The engine caught like a breath returning. A deep, clean rumble filled the room. Steady, confident, alive. Silence slammed down harder than the laughter had. Riley wiped her fingers on her jeans, glanced at the plaque again, the beginning, and felt the strangest sensation. like the engine had just opened a door she'd never known existed. And the boardroom, for the first time, had no idea what to do with her. The engine's rumble didn't just change the room. It changed the air around Graham Holt. For a second, his eyes weren't CEO eyes. They were something else. Older, unsettled, as if the sound had reached back and touched a memory he didn't keep on the surface. Directors recovered first, they always did. Survival came with practice. "Well," one said, forcing a laugh, "lucky guess." Another clapped slowly, like applause could turn discomfort into control. "Cute trick, now can we proceed?" Riley ignored them. Her gaze had dropped to the engine's side panel, where a faint stamping hid under the fresh paint. She angled her head, reading it like a sentence. Graham noticed her attention. "Something else?" "Just confirming," she said. Marina stepped in too quickly. "That's enough, Riley. You did what you were brought here to do." Brought here like she was furniture. Riley's hands moved to the stand where someone had placed a thin binder, an official manual for the presentation. She flipped it open. The pages were glossy, curated, simplified. It was a storybook, not a manual. She glanced toward the car shell attached to the engine setup, more display than vehicle, then toward the glove compartment on the side prop they'd wheeled in to complete the show. "Where's the real documentation?" she asked. Marina's smile tightened. "That is the documentation." Riley's eyes flicked to Graham. "The original manual would be with the car." Graham hesitated, and in that hesitation Riley heard the same heartbeat from Marina in Michigan. A protected thing, a guarded detail. He gestured, almost impatient. "Fine, check." Riley walked to the glove box. She expected dust, maybe a folded handbook, maybe nothing at all. Instead, her fingers brushed paper, thicker than a manual page. Older, softer at the edges. She pulled it out slowly. An envelope. Yellowed, sealed once, then reopened and tucked back like someone couldn't decide whether to keep it hidden or close it forever. Across the front, written in careful, shaking script, was a name. Carter. Riley's throat tightened. The room blurred at the edges for a moment, as if her body had taken a step before her mind caught up. She unfolded the letter. The first line hit like cold water. To the Carter family. She didn't read it out loud, not yet. But the weight of it changed her posture, changed her face, and the boardroom noticed. "What is that?" a director demanded. Riley's eyes moved across the ink. Apology, regret, a confession wrapped in formal words. Mentions of a deal made in desperation. A prototype, a fire. The sentence that made her fingers go stiff. "I didn't mean for anyone not to come home." Riley's breath went shallow. She smelled smoke that wasn't there. She saw a wrench in her mind, stubby, scorched with an etched number. Her gaze snapped to the bottom of the page. Signed Walter Holt, the CEO's father. A murmur rose around the table. Directors leaned forward, hungry now, not amused. Graham took a step closer, voice lowered. "Give me that." Riley didn't move. "You knew?" His eyes flashed. "I didn't." A different voice cut in, Marina's sharp. "This is inappropriate. Hand it over." Riley looked at Marina like she'd just noticed her for the first time. "You brought me here," Riley said quietly. "You knew my name. You knew I'd open this." Marina's face held, but her eyes didn't. Graham's voice softened, dangerously controlled. "Riley, please." That word, please, was the first human thing he'd offered her. Riley folded the letter with care, as if roughness might tear something fragile inside her. Then she tucked it into her jacket pocket. A director slammed a palm on the table. "That letter is company property." Riley turned toward the engine, and her fingers traced a seam no one else would notice, where a panel didn't sit quite flush. It wasn't cosmetic, it was intentional. "Company property," she repeated. "This engine is a vault." The room stilled. Graham stared at the engine as if seeing it for the first time. "What are you talking about?" Riley's voice stayed calm, but her eyes were lit with a steady kind of certainty. "Somebody hid more than a letter in here." She met Graham's gaze. "And I think your board knows exactly what it is." The boardroom shifted from laughter to calculation in under 10 seconds. When Riley said the word vault, the directors didn't ask what she meant. They didn't laugh again. They didn't even pretend this was childish. They reacted like people who'd heard a lock click. The silver-haired director, his nameplate read Edwin Grange, leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Young lady," he said, voice honeyed, "you've made your point. Now let the adults handle—" Riley cut him off without raising her voice. "The seam is wrong," she said, tapping the panel. "It was reassembled to hide access." Marina stepped toward her, lowering her voice like a threat disguised as concern. "Riley, don't make this bigger than it is." Riley looked at Marina's hands. Manicured, perfect. Hands that didn't know what it meant to fix something with cold fingers because the heat got shut off. "I didn't make it bigger," Riley said. "You did when you put my last name on your calendar." Graham's attention flicked between Riley and the directors. His CEO mask had small cracks now. "Everyone out," he said suddenly. The directors froze, offended. "This meeting is private," Graham repeated louder. "Now." For a moment, Riley almost believed he was choosing her. Then she saw Edwin's tiny smirk like a man watching a play he'd already rehearsed. The directors filed out slowly, leaving Marina behind as if she belonged to both sides. Graham waited until the doors shut. Then he turned to Riley, voice low. "Where did you learn to see details like that?" "In places you don't visit," Riley replied. Graham's gaze dropped to her jacket pocket. "The letter, it's real." Riley nodded once. "It says your father stole something from mine." Graham's face tightened. "My father," he stopped as if the words tasted wrong. "He was complicated." Riley let a small, humorless breath out. "So was the fire." The word landed heavy. Graham flinched just slightly. "I was a kid." Riley didn't soften. "Not yet." "So was I." Silence stretched between them, and in that silence Riley made a choice that surprised even her. She didn't expose everything immediately. Not because she was afraid, because she wanted to see who Graham Holt would be when he wasn't protected by a room full of suits. "I need access to the garage," she said. Graham blinked. "Now?" "Yes." He hesitated, then nodded. "Marina, take her." Marina's smile returned, thin and careful. "Of course." The company garage beneath the building smelled better than most homes Riley had lived in. Clean metal, new rubber, fluorescent light. Everything organized, everything controlled. Riley approached the display engine, now quieter without the board's noise around it. She ran her hands along the casing, found the hidden fasteners. Whoever built the compartment had done it with skill. Marina hovered. "What exactly are you hoping to find?" Riley didn't answer. She loosened a bolt, then another, movement steady and sure. A panel shifted. Behind it, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small metal cylinder and a stack of thin papers sealed in plastic. Riley's stomach tightened. Marina inhaled sharply. "Put that back." Riley glanced at her. "You knew." Marina's eyes hardened. "You don't understand how dangerous this is." "Dangerous for who?" Riley asked. Marina's jaw flexed. "For you." Riley opened the cylinder. Inside was microfilm. Old school, intentional, designed to survive time. She unrolled the plastic-wrapped papers. Technical sketches, diagrams, handwritten notes. Not polished patents. Original work. At the bottom of one page was a signature that made Riley's fingers go cold. Daniel Carter. Her father's name. Riley's mind flashed to her foster file. Vague phrases, missing sections. Officials who didn't meet her eyes when she asked questions. A life built around silence. Marina stepped closer, voice urgent. "Listen to me. That technology built Holt Dynamics. If you wave that around, people won't just be angry. They'll protect themselves." Riley looked up, expression unreadable. "I didn't come to wave it around." Marina's breath caught. "Then why did you come?" Riley slipped the papers back into the plastic and held the cylinder like it weighed as much as her childhood. "Because they've been telling a story with my family's work," she said, "and I'm done being a footnote." Marina's voice dropped. "What do you want? Money, a settlement?" Riley's eyes sharpened. "I want the truth in a room full of witnesses." Marina's gaze darted to the security camera in the corner, then back. "You think the CEO will stand with you?" Riley's answer was quiet but firm. "He doesn't know it yet, but he already has." She turned toward the elevator. Marina followed, panic masked as authority. "Riley." Riley paused just once. "You called me a prop," she said, "but you didn't bring me here for a photo." Her eyes held Marina's. "You brought me here because you couldn't bury this forever." And upstairs in the boardroom, the people who'd laughed were already preparing new smiles. Ones meant for bargaining. When Riley returned, the boardroom felt different, like it had been wiped clean for negotiation. The directors were back in their seats, coffee refilled, posture reset. Their laughter was gone, replaced by polished patience. The kind that said, We can make this go away." Graham stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, staring out at the skyline like he was trying to find a version of himself that still made sense. When he hung up, he turned, and his eyes landed on the cylinder in Riley's hand. "What did you find?" he asked, voice tight. Riley didn't answer him first. She looked at the directors. Edwin Grange smiled. "Riley, isn't it? You've had an exciting morning. Let's not turn a misunderstanding into a spectacle." Riley tilted her head. "Misunderstanding." Another director, a woman with diamond studs, spoke softly. "You're young, you've had a hard life. People might be influencing you." Riley's hands stayed steady. "No one had to influence me to read my father's name." The woman's smile flickered. Graham took a step toward Riley. "Show me," he said, quieter now, almost pleading. Riley met his gaze. "Not alone." A hush. Edwin's voice hardened slightly. "This is a confidential corporate environment. Whatever you found belongs to—" Riley cut him off again, gentle but unmovable. "Belongs to the person who built it." She set the plastic-wrapped sketches on the table, not sliding them, placing them like evidence. She didn't hand over the microfilm yet, not until she saw who reached for it. Edwin's fingers twitched toward the papers. Riley watched that twitch like a hawk. Graham leaned in, eyes scanning the signature, his face drained of color. "Daniel Carter," he whispered. "That's—" Riley's voice stayed calm, but the words were a blade. "My father." A director cleared his throat. "Graham, this is absurd. Anyone can—" Riley reached into her pocket and pulled out the letter from Walter Holt. She didn't read it. She just set it down beside the sketches. 2 signatures, 2 generations. One story being held shut by money. Graham stared at the letter like it might burn him. "I've never seen this," he said. Edwin's smile returned, but sharper. "Of course you haven't. Your father was a sentimental. He kept old things." Riley's eyes narrowed. "He kept guilt." The room tightened. Graham's voice rose, finally cracking the smooth CEO surface. "Did you know about this?" he demanded, looking at Edwin, then at the others. No one answered. That was answer enough. Edwin leaned back, hands spread in a gesture meant to calm. "Graham, the company exists because of decisions made in a different era. You don't want to unravel everything over a family that lost everything." Riley finished, her tone quiet, controlled. The diamond stud director sighed as if exhausted by Riley's existence. "What are you asking for, Riley? A payout, a scholarship, a seat at the table?" Riley's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm asking for the table to stop pretending it never took from me." Edwin's eyes sharpened. "You're making accusations." Riley didn't use the word he didn't want. She didn't need to. "Then let's call it something else," she said. "Let's call it a documented timeline." She glanced toward the door. At that moment, a calm knock echoed. Graham looked up, confused. Marina opened the door and 2 people stepped in. Not loud, not dramatic. One carried a briefcase. The other wore the kind of expression that said they weren't here for office gossip. Riley's voice was steady. "This is Ms. Torres," she said, nodding to the woman with the briefcase. "She's here to witness what's on that microfilm and secure it properly." Edwin's face tightened. "You brought outsiders into—" Riley's eyes didn't blink. "You brought me into it first." Graham turned to Riley, stunned. "You planned this." Riley finally let the smallest hint of emotion crack through. Not triumph, not joy. Something older. Something like survival. "I recognized the casting number," she said. "I knew this engine was tied to my father before I ever stepped into this building." She reached into her jacket and held up the metal cylinder. "And I knew you'd try to take it the second you realized what it was." Edwin stood abruptly. "This is a hostile act." Riley's gaze locked on him. "No," she said. "It's a return." Graham looked from the directors to Riley, and the air around him shifted again, like a man realizing the story he lived inside was written by someone else. Riley didn't smile. She simply asked the question that cracked the room open. "Are you going to protect your board, or finally meet your father's shadow?" The boardroom didn't explode. It froze. Because the directors understood something Graham Holt didn't. Yet Riley wasn't bluffing, and she wasn't here to be negotiated into silence. Graham's voice came out rough. "What's on the film?" Riley looked at him for a long beat. "The beginning," she said, "the real one." Edwin's tone snapped into command. "Graham, don't indulge this. We can handle it privately." Privately? That word had probably saved them 1,000 times. Graham's hands curled into fists. "I've been indulging you for years," he said, voice low. And you've been calling it leadership. The directors exchanged quick glances, micro-expressions of alarm, of recalculating loyalty. Riley placed the microfilm carefully into Ms. Torres's hands. "We're going to view it," Riley said. "Right here, with witnesses." Edwin laughed, but it sounded wrong. "You can't just—" Riley's eyes flicked to him. "Watch me." Ms. Torres set up a small portable viewer on the table. Quiet, efficient. No showmanship, just procedure. When the first image appeared, the room shifted again. Schematics. Dense, precise. Then a photograph. A young man in grease-stained coveralls beside the same 1969 engine block, smiling in a way Riley had never seen in any Foster file. The caption, handwritten, "D. Carter, prototype test." Riley's throat tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "That's my father." Graham stared as if the air had left his lungs. His eyes moved to the letter from Walter Holt, and something in him broke open. Grief, maybe, or rage, or the sick realization that his entire legacy had been curated. The film continued. Notes about a deal under pressure, mentions of a transfer without consent, and then a final image. A signed document with signatures that didn't match the smiles in the magazine photos upstairs. Edwin stood so fast his chair scraped. "This is stolen material." Riley spoke over him, calm as a closing door. "It was hidden inside your display engine. If it's stolen, it wasn't stolen by me." The Diamond Stud director tried a different angle, voice softer. "Riley, you don't have to destroy the company. You could have a future here." Riley turned to her, eyes sharp. "I already have a future," she said. "You're the ones who built yours on someone else's." Graham's voice shook. "My father." He swallowed. "He did this." Riley didn't gloat. She didn't take pleasure in his pain. "He knew," she said quietly. "That's why he wrote the letter. He didn't fix it, he just hid it." Graham's gaze snapped to Edwin. "And you?" Edwin's face hardened. "I protected the company." Graham's laugh was hollow. "You protected yourselves." A different director tried to stand, but Ms. Torres raised a hand, small, firm. "This material is now documented," she said evenly. "Any attempt to remove or alter evidence will be noted." The room's power tilted, subtle but undeniable. People who ruled meetings suddenly looked like people caught without an exit. Edwin's voice sharpened. "Graham, think carefully. If you let this go public, consequences will follow." Graham looked at Riley. "Is that what you want?" he asked. And for the first time, he sounded like a man asking, not a CEO deciding. Riley's answer was honest and cold. "I want the truth to cost the people who made it expensive." Graham's eyes closed for a moment. When he opened them, the decision was there, heavy, final. He turned to the directors. "This board is suspended pending review," he said, "effective immediately." Edwin's face contorted. "You can't—" Graham cut him off, voice steel. "I can, and I am." Phones buzzed. Assistants moved quietly behind glass. The room didn't need sirens to feel like something irreversible had begun. Riley reached for the 1969 engine plaque and lifted it off the stand. Underneath, taped to the metal, was one more folded paper, newer than the letter, addressed in a different hand. Marina's hand froze midair behind her. Riley unfolded it. It was a note, short and brutal. "If this ever resurfaces, don't let Graham take the fall." He was raised inside the lie, the board wrote it. Riley looked up at Graham, and for the first time her expression softened. Not forgiveness, not mercy. Recognition. "You didn't build this," she said quietly, "but you benefited from it." Graham nodded, voice nearly a whisper. "Tell me what to do." Riley's eyes steadied. "Start by telling the truth in the same room where they laughed at me." She picked up the engine's keys, symbolic, pointless, yet perfect, and placed them in her own pocket. Then she walked out, not with a job, not with applause, with the beginning of her name returned to her hands. By the end of that day, Riley Carter didn't become a corporate mascot. She didn't accept a quiet deal. She didn't trade her past for a polished future. She did something rarer. She forced powerful people to look directly at the story they'd been selling, and she did it without shouting, without begging, without rushing. A 16-year-old orphan walked into a room that measured worth in titles and walked out holding the one thing they couldn't manufacture, the truth with proof attached. The board tried to turn her into a misunderstanding. It didn't work. The CEO tried to turn her into a private conversation. It didn't stay private. And the engine they used as a trophy, this sacred 1969 symbol, became the very place their secrets were stored. The most unsettling part? Riley didn't even take revenge the way they expected. She didn't ask for a seat at their table. She didn't ask for permission to matter. She took the narrative back, left them with consequences, and walked away with the one artifact that held both guilt and origin. Because sometimes the most brutal revenge isn't destruction. It's refusing to be erased. Now I want to hear from you. Comment your city and country so I know where you're watching from. And answer this. If you discovered your success was built on someone else's silence, would you expose it, even if it cost you everything? If you enjoyed the slow burn tension and the twisty payoff, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because these stories only get sharper from here.